The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with my co-host, former Oshkosh Mayor and Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. It's time for another viewpoint. We haven't done one of these in a while, and lots of things to try and get people caught up on. I just want to start out by saying, and I think that part of this is public knowledge already, but this is going to be Melanie's last show. She is taking a leave of absence for an indefinite period of time to
I sound like I'm going to
pursue some other interests that are going to require some time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and I don't know, what can I say? We have done this for 2 years.
And still smiling the whole time.
Yeah, and we have ruffled an awful lot of feathers, and that's okay, because that's part of what we're supposed to be doing here. That's part of our mission.
It's been a very wonderful experience for me, because I was really worried about doing this show, especially with a seasoned journalist like yourself. You know, I'm just we always used to kid around, at least I did, that I was just kind of the color person all the time.
Yeah.
But it has truly been an honor to be able to participate in something like this on the public access with the likes of Cheryl and her professional journalism background. She's taught me a lot. And to be able to work with the great crew that we've had. I mean, they are so dedicated and really keep us going. And you know, they're doing all the work behind the scenes, and they make us look really good, which I got to tell you is a full-time job. So I will miss you all, but maybe Cheryl once in a while will let me come back and espouse my views.
I would absolutely love it. And I'm going to hold you to that. We've now, as you always say, it's on tape.
We got you on tape.
It's on tape, and so yes. So anyway, and it has been an indeed honor for me too. So I'm not going to go into anything more because
we're not really mushy kind of gals.
But you know how I feel, and you know, you're moving on to something different.
Yeah, and now you gotta keep the home fires burning, Cheryl. Stoke them, baby, stoke them.
I'm going to do that, and Tony Palmieri from Commentary will be, you know, helping out with guest hosting. We're very happy that Tony's available and able to do that. He'll be starting with the very next show that we tape toward the middle part of November. He'll be starting with us, and he's going to do that until year's end, and then I think he probably wants to start up Commentary in the new year. So, so then you'll have even more choices of alternative programming in the Oshkosh area. So anyway, thank you for 2.5 wonderful years, and you will be sorely missed, and but we will get you back. We'll get you back.
Time to time, you bet.
Yep. So now that we've got that out of the way, and I wanted to do that first so that we had enough time.
Great.
We have had an election recently.
Boo.
And you know, I don't know, I think a lot of us were disappointed with the overall election, but one thing that did happen that was good, and that is that finally, come this April, the people in the city of Oshkosh will be able to elect their mayor, albeit a mayor who's absolutely powerless. Now, this is a good thing, but you know, now we have 2 candidates with hats in the ring already, Paul Esslinger and Frank Tower.
So far,
and that could change. But what I find interesting about this is that, you know, Frank Tower, when he announced his bid to run, went on WOSH and said something to the effect of that he was going to run because he wanted to see that downtown redevelopment continued, and something about making sure that the west side was taken care of. I don't know what that was all about, and I'm paraphrasing here, so you know, I don't recall exactly what he said about the west side, but I thought that was kind of innocuous. I didn't understand it. But I don't understand how his running for mayor is going to ensure that downtown redevelopment happens, because this was his amended, watered-down version that got passed. The mayor has no power to do anything. I'm grateful that we still have the opportunity to say who the mayor is rather than leaving it up to the city council, but Mr. Tower by himself can't ensure that this gets done, and being mayor isn't going to ensure that downtown redevelopment continues. If he's worried about that, let him just, you know, why does he need to run for mayor? Why doesn't he just run for another time on the council if, you know, when his time is up, and be done with it?
Well, I think it's really interesting because it's exactly as you just said, Cheryl, that he watered it down. He wasn't excited about the proposition of having a strong mayor, one that had veto power, one that it kind of was the go-to person for the elected officials. He didn't want any of that.
If he had been a strong mayor, then he could have, were he to be elected, if the council didn't want downtown redevelopment,
he'd have veto power.
He would have veto power to be able to ensure that. He can't ensure squat.
No.
As with just one vote.
Well, and I think it's very interesting because of all the people on the city council that I think is going to have probably a difficult time running for mayor, it's going to be Frank Tower. He has supported this amphitheater and expenditures in this downtown ad nauseum with little, I mean, I think what people are going to start to see with this downtown redevelopment is the coming of a downtown holocaust of likes. Simply because there's been no business plan laid out for its success. So by virtue of that, there is nothing but demise on the forefront for the amphitheater. With no business plan, there has been no promoter. With no promoter, there's no acts. With no acts, there's no concessions. They're now first going out for RFPs, which are requests for proposals, to consider who's going to run it, who's going to run the concessions, who's going to do this. None of these things were thought of. And this is a guy who has supported this kind of business plan, or lack thereof, and the expenditure at taxpayers' expense. Taxpayers never got a chance to decide whether they wanted the amphitheater, and he supported that. He supported spending the dollars down there. He supported watering down the ability for taxpayers to actually have a strong mayor that would have a voice. And now he's going to come forward and be the guy that's going to be the face of the city of Oshkosh, who has spent money.
And be the one who sees that things get done when he can't do anything.
Well, and I guess the problem that I have is, how does an individual that has not seen fit to put together a business plan to operate something as simple as an amphitheater going to take charge of an entire city with a multitude of issues, budgetary and personnel alike? How's he going to do all of that when we can't even get a business plan together or force the city council to do their homework that way? I think this is actually going to be kind of comical to see the face of the Chamber of Commerce, which is going to be Frank Tower, and I'm telling you, you're going to see every who's who backing him that's a chamber guy. So if you want the Chamber of Commerce to continue running your city, make sure you put your plug in for Frank now. You'll probably want to make your checks out to Chamber of Commerce for Frank Tower. And if you want somebody who has shown that he's willing to take the heat for you, you know, you're going to support Paul Esslinger. So it's good. I think it's going to be a very interesting and very diametrically opposed campaign. I'm looking forward to it, and it'd be fun if there was just one spoiler in there that nobody quite planned for.
All righty, and speaking of the city, you know, we have got, it's budget time. Now, by the time this show airs, the budget may have been approved, I don't know. But as of this taping, it has not yet been approved. There hasn't even been a public hearing on the budget yet, although budget hearings with the council have been held. And, you know, we're looking at an approximately 5.8% tax hike. And, you know, this is exactly what we've been saying. for the last 2 years, and in particular this last year with all the spending that these folks have been doing. I mean, this isn't even taking into account what fees for services they may put in place, although I haven't heard of any, but you know, we don't know. We don't know.
This is on top of the fees for services from last year.
Correct. I mean, 5.8%.
On top of all the fees.
Now, that's a lot of Butterburgers, I think, as far as Shirley Maddox is concerned. You know, this is ridiculous. And, you know, it was interesting because Mark Harrison here was quoted in the paper as saying, we're really just getting growth in property taxes from new development, and my understanding is that's a pretty small amount, adding that the council will whittle down the tax rate increase. Well, I'm going to be real curious to see how they whittle it down.
Well, I'm confused by that statement that he said that he's seeing a small increase in growth on property tax rate, because this was the guy who said that if we spend gazillions of dollars in our downtown, that was going to immediately influx the tax base, and therefore all this property was going to be worth more money, and it's going to be easier on our taxes, and gee whiz, this was a really smart thing to do. And now he's contradicting himself by saying, you know what, that takes a little bit longer than maybe what I thought.
And in addition to that, this is a 5.8% proposed tax hike, which includes cutting out another 250 street lights. Mm-hmm. We're going to cut out more street lights, but we spend, what was it, $100,000
to put them on the bridge?
Decorative lighting on the bridge. Mm-hmm. This is ridiculous.
You just can't turn them on. We can put them on the bridge. You just can't turn them on.
You know, and
it's kind of, Cheryl, instead of the lights go out in Georgia, it's the lights have gone out in Oshkosh.
So in the last 3 years, if that's approved, in the last 3 years, the city will have done away with 1,000 streetlights. I mean, this is just asinine. And let's see. The other thing is the police department this coming year, if things stand as they're being proposed, the police department's only going to get 4 new squad cars, as opposed to the number that they wanted, and I think they've been buying 8 a year, if I'm not mistaken. So they're only going to get half of what they've been doing in the past. And yet this city council just seems to think that everything is just wonderful, and everything that they're doing is just swell.
Well, and this has been one of my biggest gripes. What is the charge of the city? What does the city government, what is it supposed to provide, and what is it actually providing today? Mm-hmm. We've gone so far outside the purview of what our charge was. And we're trying to be all things to all people. And it is not working. We are not being successful at this.
I would disagree with that. They're trying to be all things to a select group of people.
Well, and we're pandering to those that define the quality of life by huge capital ventures. Mm-hmm. And to some of us, just making sure that our street is plowed and our garbage is picked up is a quality of life issue.
And police and fire will respond should we need them.
Yeah, exactly. I just have some real problems with, you know, like you said, we've put up all this decorative lighting in the historical districts. Looks beautiful. How long are those lights going to be on? I mean, there comes a safety issue here.
Exactly.
You know, people are no longer can go for walks in certain neighborhoods because it's so pitch black. You're actually increasing the likelihood of crime, which means now we're going to have more calls on our police department, which, by the way, overtime, you know, are we controlling our overtime costs? Those were some of the biggest costs that we had, were our overtime costs and our PD. They also hired 6 new firefighters. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not understanding the logic of some of these moves. I'm not understanding it.
Well, here's the absolute best. Harris said the increase may be reason to use general fund, the often labeled rainy day fund, in order to reduce this tax hike. Mm-hmm. That's not what the general fund is there for. That is tantamount to the state legislature using tobacco money almost.
Well, it's tantamount to the state legislature not having a rainy day fund because they pilfered that too. Here's the antiquated logic of the likes of Mark Harris and Frank Tower, because Frank Tower has also suggested that we go in and snatch funds that have been set aside in case there's a catastrophe in our community. Those monies are set aside in the general fund in order to operate this city for a period of time if there is some sort of catastrophe. Now, if these gentlemen are saying that we are flush in that fund and that we definitely have enough money to be able to operate the community in case of an emergency for an extended period of time, then stop taking more of our tax money. Let us keep it.
That's right.
Then you don't have to worry about the 5.8% and having your little slush fund set aside so you look like you're some kind of hero. Do a better job of budget.
And he says we can't go without the gasoline and we can't go without the electricity, because of course gasoline and electricity, along with health insurance premiums, are what have helped to, help to swell this budget. And I say help to because their spending hasn't helped. Now, granted, the money that they have bonded for or will be bonding for, I'm sure by now they've probably bonded for it, for Riverside Park, granted, that's not shown up in here, but guess what? Yeah, yet. It will. Yeah. When you have to start repaying the debt on those loans, that's when it's going to start showing up.
When it's going to start showing up there is the maintenance of a park that you have now facilitated at millions of dollars. $650,000 for the golden commodes. You're going to have to hire people to clean them. You're going to have to hire more people to mow the lawns.
Let me stop you. It's no longer $650.
Oh,
I hold in my hand the preliminary draft of the capital improvement program for 2005 through 2009. This is just unbelievable. For the park improvements for 2005, Riverside Park alone, it wasn't $600,000 and it's not $650,000. It's now being proposed at $675,000 for 2 amphitheater area restrooms. And then in addition to that, we have 2 other items for Riverside Park on here. Items that both Paul Esslinger and Brian Peschel didn't seem to know exactly what they were about. So I'm not sure where these things came from. But Riverside Park, preliminary design and plans for expansion area number 2, $125,000 for that. And lest we forget, $75,000 for an architectural plan for a pavilion. Now, where the hell is this pavilion coming from?
Cheryl, I really don't know. This has again, these kinds of expenditures, we are indebting our community 10 and 20 years into the future, depending on how they choose to bond for this. Our bonded indebtedness goes directly to the bottom line of what our bond ratings are going to be. We keep jacking up how much we borrow. There comes a point where you don't have any more borrowing capacity. You're tapped out. You're done. So if we choose to prioritize these types of things and we minimize our infrastructure needs, do you remember when Mark Harris ran and he said, streets, oh my God, we're going to have all of our streets done. Streets are going to be wonderful. I'm going to take care of streets. Do you see more streets being taken care of? Because I think they look like crap.
Yeah, they do look like crap.
But we're going to have a nice park downtown. We don't know how it's going to work, Cheryl.
We don't know that yet.
We don't know who's going to run it. We don't know what acts are going to be there. We don't know how much it's going to cost if we can actually get in. We don't know who's going to sell the concessions. We don't know any of that.
But we're going to have wonderful bathrooms to pee in and poop in if we decide to go down there for something.
I'm just not getting it. I'm not.
No.
And this is why it is difficult. And these are the kinds of things why taxpayers voted for Greg Underheim when he said that he would support Tabor, which is the taxpayers' Bill of Rights, because they are so sick and tired of the irresponsible spending habits of people like the Fab Five on the city council,
Yes.
that they would actually innocuously put in place the likes of Greg Underheim again, who will tell them and lie to them that Tabor is a good thing and it's going to help them, because they're looking for any kind of tax relief that they can get, even if they don't understand what the ramifications are. Even when you have the likes of Brian Peschel and Paul Esslinger beating their heads against the brick wall, trying to convey to people, help us. Please help us.
And there's two other items just in the 2005 park improvements, capital improvements budget, and it was constructing a new playground for 52.5 over in Abbey Park.
Which is ridiculous. We just got a new park
that's
there.
in your neck of the woods. And a $150,000 splash pad in West Haven Circle, West Haven Circle Park, actually. So it's not 110,000 as we used to think. It's 150,000. I guess the extra 40,000 is for the labor to put it in. I guess the 110,000 is for, you know, the materials itself. But you know, there are a number of splash pads proposed throughout this five-year budget. So I think there's either 3 or 4. So that's rather interesting. And you know, you're absolutely right. This is getting ridiculous, and you can only indebt yourself so far. You know, maybe what we should all do, every one of us who is fed up, and that's a lot of people in this city, maybe we should all just say, you know what, the hell with it. Let's just sell our homes, put our homes on the markets, leave town, and then let them see where they get the money.
Oh, see, and I don't think we should do that at all. I've worked too hard to get what I have, and I don't want to sell my house. I like my house. I think we should sell the council members.
Well,
I think we should auction them off to another community who's willing to take them.
We'll sell them on eBay.
Yeah, they'll go cheap, maybe kind of like the Lions. We'll paint them up.
Well, now the Lions were good. I like the Lions.
We can paint up council members.
Well, but I'm not crazy
Only
about
5
the
of them.
council members.
Only 5.
But the Lions I liked.
Yeah.
The area pantries are bare and need food donations.
But things are going swell, Cheryl.
They're going swell, and you know, we're flush with money at the city, so that's always encouraging. One thing I wanted to bring up, you know, months ago, it was March or April, I had filed a complaint with the local district attorney's office in Winnebago County over the Oshkosh Can Board giving a $500 donation to Breathe Free Oshkosh, which of course they did pay back when they got caught basically with their finger in the cookie jar when it shouldn't have been. And it had to be referred out of Winnebago County because of a potential conflict of interest, since the chief of police and the county sheriff serve on the CAN board. So Winnebago County DA Bill Lennon referred it out of the county, asked for a special prosecutor to handle it, and it went up to Brown County, where John Zakowski is the district attorney. And it has taken literally months to get this resolved. But I did, when is this postmarked? October 19th. I did get a copy of a letter that was sent to Chuck Dinkle, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because some of it is quoting state statutes, but I will just simply say that he explained the investigation into the allegations of open meetings law violations to Chuck Dinkle, and he once again cited the law for him so that he understood that they could not do what they had been doing. And then he says, we understand most board members are regular citizens. Most board members are regular citizens who may not be familiar with open meetings law requirements. However, some members had government experience, and we were also told Oshkosh City Attorney Warren Kraft addressed rules and issues concerning government ethics, including the open meetings law. What is troubling is there were other instances of meetings with an insufficient number of members to constitute a quorum where donations were voted and authorized, including $1,225 to support a local drug and alcohol recovery group's picnic and an educational video used by Theta Clark Behavioral Health. Now, you know, the thing is, obviously, the Oshkosh Can Board is no longer supported by or endorsed by, if you will, the city. They're no longer a sanctioned city board. That was, you know, their charter was stripped shortly after all this kind of came to a head. But he said, continuing, our concern is that the members be made aware of the requirements of the open meetings law for future reference. The goals of the CAN board are laudable. We do not want citizens who are volunteering their time and effort to get into trouble by violating the rules of Chapter 19 of the Wisconsin statutes, blah, blah, blah. A subsequent violation by board members would be looked at as a knowing and wanton violation, which could lead to formal action taken by the state. So, you know, I guess I have some mixed feelings about this. I'm glad that the DA up in Brown County agrees with me, and pardon me, and you and others who supported this, that there were in fact violations of state law. But,
Flagrant.
you know, they've done nothing about it, which we sort of figured they wouldn't. You know, he basically said, well, you know, they paid the money back and they're no longer a city-sanctioned board, and, you know, we can't see taking up time in the courts with this. Well, if it were a private citizen who did something and said, geez, you know, I'm really, you know, say you steal something from a local store, okay, and you get caught, somebody catches you, and you turn right around and say, geez, I'm really sorry I took this, I'll take it back, and you take it back the very next day, you're still going to get a citation for shoplifting, and you're still going to have to pay a fine. But I think that we've set a precedent here, and just because these are some elected officials and some just volunteer citizens, blah, 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 we're not going to waste time in our courts with nonsense like this, because it's not really a worthwhile pursuit. Well, then why pursue shoplifters? Why pursue some of these other little petty things? You know, I'm sorry, it's a violation of the law, and it should have been handled appropriately.
Well, I think there's a fear of political correctness by elected officials like district attorneys taking on laudable entities that are doing work in the community against drugs and alcohol, and you think, oh, gee whiz, you know, we don't want to hurt, you know, these poor folks that are doing such hard work and obviously not getting paid. The problem with that is that these were flagrant violations.
Yes.
They were made by persons that knowingly and wantingly did exactly as they pleased. And that's the problem that we have, is that and I wouldn't be probably as upset or angry about the open meetings law violations had our city attorney Warren Kraft not continuously over the years made concerted efforts after his full workday to go to every single one of our city committee meetings and spend an enormous amount of time going over the law, answering questions, going through scenarios. I mean, if none of that would have happened, okay, so you made a mistake, you didn't understand. Even though ignorance of the law does not preclude you from having to follow it, but we did have a city attorney who spent a lot of manpower, a lot of time, because he wanted to make sure people were knowledgeable. Right. And these weren't just your Joe Blow average citizens that, oh well, these are people of our community who have been in leadership positions, who know better.
Many of them have been, yes.
So, yeah, on that.
Well, and on the same subject of the Oshkosh
I got a
Board.
bigger hand slapping when I took care of the drop prop campaign, Grace. They were ready to throw me in jail because I didn't sign an affidavit that I was going to be a treasurer for a political action committee. Cripes. I was dragged into Joe Paulus' office, and an investigator was sent out to my house. I had to meet with attorneys. Holy cripes.
Yeah. Speaking of Joe Paulus, I wonder how he's doing. He seems to be getting in a little more trouble with each Sunday's newspaper that comes out.
I got to tell you, this newspaper is just becoming a joke because, all right, Oshkosh Northwestern, get over yourself. You're not an investigative newspaper. You haven't been for a good long time. You dropped the ball on Joe Paulus because you're so busy puckering up and kissing his backside.
And bastardizing the likes of E.J. Jelinski, Ann Gallner, and Tom Chalkoff.
You missed it. You had your blinders on. You were busy looking in one direction and, you know, right past you. Okay.
Even when it was handed to him.
Yeah, I mean, so we get it. We know you're not an investigative newspaper. Get over yourself, okay? Even the articles that like Alex Hummel and those guys are writing now, if you start reading some of those articles, there's so much editorialization going on in those articles now. It's not a fact-finding article. They're not even presenting facts. They'll present, you know, a half a paragraph of facts and then they'll editorialize. I mean, just go through a couple of those and you can see that all of a sudden Alex Hummel's editorializations now have become part of the article as though it's factual information. So, okay, we get it. You're not investigative, but could you just stop with the Joe Paulus on the front page? You blew it! You didn't get it. You haven't gotten half the crap that's gone on in this community flying right by you. You haven't held anybody's feet to the fire on anything, unless, of course, they happen to disagree with you on something.
Yes.
And then in that case, you can light a tiki torch under them.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you're absolutely right. And I don't know. I don't know where it ends, but I thought it was funny the way this continues to tell the tale that E.J. Jelinski, Tom Chalkoff, and Ann Gallner knew of what they spoke, and there's just more and more stuff that's coming out.
I guess being a fat, chubby little bat boy is not a bad thing.
Yeah,
huh?
that's what they called
EJ.
EJ in one of their editorials, I think,
Yeah,
wasn't
chubby
it?
little bat boy who really didn't know much.
But I wanted to go back to the...
Maybe he's batting for the Red Sox, huh?
I wanted to go back to the Oshkosh-Can board because a couple of days before we were taping this, actually I think it was one day before we're taping this, there was an article in the local section of the paper about the Festival of Trees, which has been a, you know, ongoing event for the Oshkosh-Can board. You know, they decorate up Christmas trees and put them down at, I don't know if it was at the convention center or where it was. All of a sudden now, they're not going to do that this year. And
Change will do them good.
change will do them good. Well, I don't even know if they've been getting change. They seem to be without some funds, I think. I personally know of some restaurants who yanked their support. And but it said something about that they wanted to have a new face on it, or it needed a new face or a new appearance,
Smokey
or
the Bear.
something. Smokey the Bear, something like that. But then the article did go on to say that, you know, because they're no longer a city chartered board, that's factoring into this. How is that factoring into it? The city wasn't giving them any financial support. One of the, you know, support staff people in City Hall was typing up their minutes, but, you know, good Lord, they shouldn't have to shut down their fundraiser event because their minutes aren't being typed up. I mean, I
think it was a political fiasco.
Well, I'd have been happy to type up their minutes just to make sure that they're staying above board and stuff. I would have volunteered my time if it meant that they could keep their Festival of Trees events going. But it's, you know, it's apparently not going on this year, and I just, for the life of me, I don't understand how having their city charter yanked has made a difference in this.
It's beyond me.
Okay. Well, going back to the election, you know, Tony,
must we?
Yeah, Tony Palmieri had been running, as we know, as a Green Party candidate against Greg Underheim. Mm-hmm. And with that election, now having gone to Mr. Underheim yet once again, you know, Tony's been getting bashed by Gordon Hentz in particular, and Gordon Hentz supporters, for kind of being a spoiler in that race. As if to say that if he hadn't been in the race, Gordon Hentz would have gotten all those votes.
Or Greg, yeah.
Yeah, or Greg. You know, and Tony wrote a wonderful, you know, commentary piece in the Northwestern. It was posted on November 7th. And if anyone didn't have a chance to read it, I would encourage you to, because he really lays it on the line.
I think he said everything that needed to be said. And that's one of the reasons that I really like Tony, he is so diligent in doing his homework and laying things out in very plain terms. You don't have to be a degreed attorney. You don't have to have any special political knowledge to understand Tony's very plain spoken, very easy to understand movements for bettering the legislature and the state of Wisconsin. And I think the cheap shots that are being taken by Gordon and even by Greg are, listen, personally I think it's just a form of humongous arrogance and testosterone blowing all over the place. These guys honestly believe that automatically, by virtue of being a Republican or a Democrat, that you're entitled to somebody's vote. I am so sick of the two-party system, I could just erp.
Yep.
I think we should abolish the whole system process to begin with and make people vote for people based on issues so that maybe they're actually listening and learning something. And I really believe, now this took me some time because I have always been a strong believer that, you know, conservatives are Republican and liberals are Democrats, and that is such a bunch of hogwash, and if this presidential election didn't prove that, nothing did. But I think that there is room in this country, and if there isn't, there darn well should be, for more than two parties. There's more than two ideas.
Correct.
I mean, is there not? I mean, I can't define my whole being by Republican or Democrat.
Right.
I just can't. There's more ideas out there than that for people, and there's got to be more room for choices. I mean, hell, we even get more choices than that in our health insurance.
Well, yeah, and who can understand those choices? But these were choices that I thought were pretty clear cut. I mean, you know, personally, I couldn't agree with you more on we need to do away with the two-party system. And the thing is, I applaud both Tony and Dan Carpenter
Absolutely.
for Dan, who of course ran as an independent, for throwing their hats in the ring and giving the people choices.
And they did a darn fine job too. Both of those gentlemen. Dan Carpenter, first time ever at a dais discussing political issues. He's a very easygoing, you know, fine human being, has dedicated himself to a lot of volunteer work in this community, is well known through his teaching.
And he's retired from the Oshkosh area school district.
And he did a lot of homework. He didn't take any special interest money. He did this all on a shoestring kind of thing. I mean, that takes some guts. And didn't go for the chamber dollars or PAC dollars, or, you know, didn't get endorsements from the newspaper. Hell, they barely covered these guys.
Yeah.
So, you know, Tony and Dan may have, you know what I think? I think these two guys are so far ahead of their time and had so much more courage than so many people gave them credit for. You know, the state of Wisconsin was not always dominated by Democrats or Republicans. There was the Progressive Party, the Whigs. I mean, you know, there's different kinds of parties.
Right.
So maybe we're not just heading towards a revolution, but an evolution of people's thinking as far as the party process and the party system. And Tony came up with other fantastic ideas about how, you know, when somebody like Greg Underheim only gets 3% of the vote, that if you're not getting 50%, there should be an automatic runoff because it's not a mandate.
Right. And here's what he says about that. He says the runoff could take place 2 weeks or a month later, and it would ensure that the winner goes to Madison with a clear majority of votes. Many states and municipalities already use runoff voting. And he said, or an even better solution is instant runoff voting, or IRV. It's also known as rank choice voting. IRV allows voters to vote for their first, second, and third choice candidates in just one trip to the polls. Now,
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I really like that idea. Now, if no candidate is the first choice of at least 50% of the voters, then instant runoff voting allows for a same-day runoff. It ensures that the winning candidate enjoys true support from the majority of the voters, and it eliminates the concern that a vote for a third-party candidate is wasted.
What What do you do if there's only 2 candidates?
I don't know. It's not my proposal.
Well, but I mean,
I'll ask Tony that when he starts
But I mean,
co-hosting.
I think that's a excellent idea. The problem is that if we're so ingrained in this 2-party process, many times, hell, half the time you don't even get anybody to run against these incumbents. Nonetheless, have more choices. So I think the 54th Assembly District was extremely fortunate to have the choices that we did, to have intelligent debate. Whether I agreed or disagreed, I think all parties did an excellent job of putting out there what their thoughts were, you know, with the exception of Greg Underheim, who just always panders. You know, you just don't get straight answers, ever.
No, well, speaking, I mean, you brought up the word pandering. I mean, the level to which he stooped a few days or a day before the election, handing out literature on the campus over at UWO, telling the students that he was in favor of the 19-year-old drinking age. I mean, come on. How low can you go when you have to try? First of all, if I were a student over there, I would have been insulted by that, because that's to suggest that the only damn thing these kids care about is drinking and the almighty beer bottle. Now, granted, I'm sure some of them do. I've seen some of them walking past my house after the bars close. But that is not the better majority of these students, and I would have just been highly insulted if he had handed me something like that.
I didn't see it, so like I said, but you know, listening to these debates back and forth, I was very impressed with Tony's fire. I really liked the fact that Gordon was fiery. These guys did not lay down. Dan did not lay down. They went after these things. They were not afraid to disagree with each other and be passionate about it. It was a wonderful thing to see the passion that these gentlemen had. And you know what I think is very interesting is you read the editorials right after the election. And the editorial writers for the Oshkosh Northwestern are now talking about how that these incumbents are really one of the biggest problems for the state of Wisconsin and the legislature, because you know, now that they're back in there, there's really not going to be any changes, because they're going to go about doing the same thing as always, and that these legislators need to start looking out after their districts. They really have to start paying attention. And I'll never forget when I went into the editorial board, against my better judgment, I did it anyway, to talk to Stu Rickman and the boys and gals about running against Greg Underheim. And their single criticism about me was that I cared too much about the 54th Assembly District. I concentrated solely on the city of Oshkosh, and I didn't have a view of the bigger picture of the state of Wisconsin. Isn't it interesting in this day and time that that bigger picture has become the problem and the concentration on the district is the issue?
Well, you know, I mean, you can have a big picture of the state of Wisconsin, but bottom line, your district is the city of Oshkosh if you're serving or wanting to serve the 54th.
That's your job.
You know, speaking of incumbents being back in, I mean, Carol Owens also got elected back in. You know, Luann Bird and Steve Dito both put up very, very good fights. Steve, of course, got knocked out in September's primary, but
he did a great job. I was
really
very impressed with him.
And Luann did too.
Excellent.
Luann did a wonderful job too.
I thought she would be more of a Pollyanna, I got to tell you. Luann is a very, very nice person. She's not abrasive like I am. So I thought she was going to be more of a sweet kind of Pollyanna, Carol Rossler, kissing up kind of thing. That woman went after it. I was so proud of her. She went after it, and she really fought for that thing. And you could see that this was important to her, that she was willing to take it to another level, and that she was really going to fight for that 53rd. I just think it's a shame that she wasn't given the opportunity to do that, because I think she would have been a real asset. As I wish Steve could have made it too, because I think Steve, just taking his knowledge, his humor, his different view, thinking outside the box, his creative thinking, all the things that Steve does so incredibly well, and his plain spokenness, you know, would have been just a huge asset.
Very down to earth, that anybody can understand, no matter
Yeah.
what your level of education.
Yeah.
But you know, there was one other person in that 53rd Assembly District race, and it was Richard Spanbauer.
Yes, he was a very nice
again,
guy.
he was the Republican candidate who was eliminated in the September primary. But you know, I guess the underlying and overall message that I see here, Mel, is that, you know, you would think that these politicians would get a clue. The incumbents, you think that they would get a clue. If you're doing a good job, nobody's going to say, I'm coming after you, I want your job. They will like what you're doing, and they will keep sending you back to Madison or to the city council or the school board or whatever the case may be. But when you have 3 other people coming after you, as did Greg Underheim and as did Carol Owens, I would think that these people would be smart enough to see that some people aren't happy. And when you start adding up the numbers, the numbers of votes that your opponents are getting, okay, just because you get the greatest majority of the votes, because you get 51% or more, you've still got an awful large percentage out there of people who don't think you're doing such a swell job. And why do you not try and make more of your constituents happy? You know, because if you're doing a good job, they're not going to want to fire you. They're going to want to send you back.
Well, and I think Greg getting the percentages that he did. Now, please remember, this was a presidential election.
Yes.
And the kick factor by having an incumbent Republican president running, automatically, by virtue of that, you already get a bump by being a Republican running in a Republican presidential election. Okay? And his numbers still stunk up the place. It still wasn't even 50%. You got Gordon Hentz, who is the new kid on the block. He
hadn't even lived here a year.
Hadn't even lived here a year. Came from here, moved away, came back. New kid on the block. Tony Palmieri running as a green. And Dan Carpenter never run before. And look at what these people were able to do.
Between the 3 of the challengers, they pulled in
more than Greg.
I think it was 54% of the vote.
And that's with the Republican presidential incumbent.
Right. I mean, it defies logic. I mean, why would you not reach out? Why would you not reach out to your constituents to a greater degree? Why just settle for saying, well, I won the election?
Why? Well, and my question goes one further. Why haven't you been going to school board meetings? Why haven't you been going to city council meetings? Why aren't you talking to these people that are begging for your help?
And why aren't they going around on a regular basis? And I'm talking about Greg Underheim here in particular now. You know, his ads, I thought his radio ads were just horrible. They stunk up the joint as far as I'm concerned. But in any event, you know, they're talking about how, you know, there's 2 people on there, a man and a woman, and they're talking about how he's always around. They're always seeing him. You only see him knocking on doors at election time. I have never seen him knock on doors when it's not been campaign season. And then he's a real hard worker. He hits every door because he wants to ensure that $45,000 a year job, that part-time job that,
with benefits.
Yeah. You know, these legislators, it is a part-time job and they should view it as such. And, you know, I'll tell you, Dean Coffert, who is one of the state legislators from Neenah, I mean, this is a man who truly views his state legislative job as a part-time job. This is a man who owns a trophy shop down there. And unless he's at a meeting in Madison, this man's in his office every doggone day. He's at that store. He's cranking out those trophies and those plaques. And, you know, that's what it's all about. This is not meant to be a full-time job.
Well, I got to tell you, I was not particularly pleased. My thought process was, what level do we have to sink to in the city of Oshkosh before we start getting the community's attention that we're really in trouble? How long are people going to settle for the status quo before they understand that we're seriously in trouble, and the ones that they keep putting back aren't getting it, don't care, and you're going to be on your own.
Right.
Name recognition is just not enough anymore.
Right.
Show me the money.
Because we're not seeing too much of it right now, and we
you're
would
not
like
going
to see it.
But you will be seeing probably a 5.8% increase on your taxes. And just remember, another $1 million gone in shared revenue, but make sure that you let Greg know how much you appreciate him when you voted for him.
Did you have anything on your list? Because I've kind of just
Well, you know,
led the charge here tonight.
Well, no, you were talking, and I wanted to back up a little bit. You kind of skimmed over the food pantries being empty.
Yes.
And by the time this airs, we're kind of moving into that holiday season, and I'm hoping that people, I know things are tough out there, a lot of people without work, but those of us who are fortunate enough to still be employed, you know, if we can find a way to scrape together a few things here and there to take them down to the local pantry of your choice so that maybe we can help our neighbors and brothers and sisters out of this community who have really kind of fallen on hard times, I know would be greatly appreciated. There's a lot of people out there, folks, that would never, ever, ever ask for help. But this is for their families, and winter's coming, and it's going to get tough. And so if you know of somebody and they're even a little something that you can do, it will go a long way.
It really will.
And so I hope that we can all help the best that we can.
I wanted to bring up one other thing, and I'm going to ask you to comment on this because you've seen it and I haven't. You were telling me that you had seen Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11.
Yes.
And you were just so moved by and impressed with this film. Would you mind just sharing with the viewers for a few minutes what it was about that film that moved you so much and what your impressions of it were?
You know, I was skeptical of viewing this for a long time because I'm one of those type of people. I've been in politics long enough, even at a little local level, to understand propaganda BS when I see it. My sister was one of the ones that actually encouraged me to suck it up and just give it a try. That I might change my viewpoints and stances on things, and that, unfortunately, contrary to my popular belief, I'm not always right. Thank God for her and her patience with me. So I rented the movie. My husband and I rented it, and we spent an evening watching it. And from the very beginning to the very end, the only way that I can really describe this picture is I was so angry and so disillusioned. I think those are probably the words that best describe my feelings, that my country, my president, the leaders that I trusted and believed in lied to me. They did it with malice. And I'm not old enough to remember the Vietnam War, so I really wasn't, it's kind of like my sister had said. She said, you know, I think people who have been through this before, Vietnam and how that was all handled, had a tendency to be less trusting of their government because we've been kind of led down this path before. We've been told things before. My generation really didn't understand or remember that. We were just too young. We came in on that kind of on the back side. So for me, and I can only speak for me personally, I don't want to speak for my whole generation, and certainly not my gender or what have you, but for me, being in politics and trying really, really hard to tell people things, even when I know that they're absolutely going to hate what I have to say, to try to be as honest as I know how to be and straightforward, and asking people to trust me and giving me a chance to show them that, you know, I will do what I say I'm going to do. I believed in my government. When President Bush says, we need your support, We need you to support the troops. We need you to support this mission. We need you to back us up. And there are things that we're not going to be able to share with you because of national security. And I blindly, because I truly, in my naivete, believe that why would my country lie to me? Why would my president lie to me? Why would they lead me to believe that something was so when it's not? Why would they do that? We're all Americans. We're brothers and sisters. This is the United States of America. Mm-hmm. My flag waves high, baby. You know, I'm a very patriotic soul, and
yes.
And so in watching this 9/11, I can only describe to you a rage in me, and the only way that it came out was I literally sobbed through almost the entire movie. I was so angry because I felt so incredibly betrayed. And I want to believe in my government. I want to believe when people tell me it is so. I was taught that when you give your word, it is your bond. Yeah. It is who you are. And to feel as though that these people, the highest leaders of the land, would think so little of all of us and take our sisters and our brothers and our sons. I have a daughter that could be drafted, who could be over in Iraq right now, and blow them to smithereens based on something that wasn't even true. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm going to ever quite be the same again in being so willing to believe because somebody says it is so, without asking the questions. Because I'm always one of those, I always think I ask the questions. I ask all the questions. I ask too many questions.
Yeah, but in a case like this, what are you going to do? Call the White House and ask questions?
But I never questioned any of it.
Well, I know, and I understand what you're saying, but you know, I guess we could have questioned our state representatives. They could get answers from the White House, but you know, it was such a time that I don't know that anyone would have gotten back to us. Shoot, they couldn't get back to us about appearing on the show, so.
I never even questioned the Patriot Act. I thought, you know, if the government says that we got to give up certain things so that we can catch the bad guys. I never did.
I questioned.
Until I went to see the League of Women Voters put on the thing about what we were actually giving up, and I went, holy crap.
No, that I questioned. All right, well, we're just about out of time. So on that note, Mel, thank you again for 2.5 wonderful
It's been
years.
great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank all of you.
And we'll see you next time, folks. Tony Palmieri will be joining me next time. Thanks again for welcoming us into your homes. You take good care. Until we meet again, you keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh. Take care.